What happens when a joke meant to get a laugh becomes the reason your husband hands you divorce papers? How could one careless insult at a family dinner tear a marriage apart, leaving you holding the blame while he quietly gathers proof? Can honesty fix what cruelty broke, or does it only speed up the ending? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The crystal chandelier cast warm light over our table at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated family milestones for years. Tonight was my mother-in-law Miriam's 62nd birthday, and the whole extended family had gathered. Graham sat beside me in his usual quiet way, methodically cutting his chicken parmesan while conversation flowed around us. I felt invisible again. That familiar sensation of being overlooked, dismissed, forgotten in the shadow of my reserved husband's stoic presence. Graham never raised his voice, never demanded attention, never commanded a room the way other men did. Sometimes I wondered if anyone even noticed I existed when I was with him. "So, Graham, how's the new office building project coming along?" asked my brother-in-law Rick, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Moving forward on schedule," Graham replied in his measured tone. "The structural engineering phase should wrap up by month's end." I watched as heads nodded approvingly around the table. Everyone always respected Graham's work as an architect, his quiet competence, his reliability. But where was the passion, the fire, the masculine energy that made women take notice? Shane Marwick, my co-worker from the insurance office, caught my eye from across the table and winked. He'd been flirting with me for months, always finding excuses to stop by my desk, complimenting my outfits, making me feel desirable in ways Graham hadn't in years. When I'd mentioned Miriam's birthday dinner, Shane had practically invited himself, claiming he wanted to reconnect with Graham after losing touch since college. "Odessa, you look absolutely stunning tonight," Shane said, his voice carrying that warm charm that made my pulse quicken. "That dress is incredible on you." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Why, thank you, Shane. It's nice when someone notices the effort." Graham glanced at me briefly, then returned to his meal without comment. The dismissal stung. "Graham's always been the strong, silent type," Miriam said, pride evident in her voice. "Never needed to be the loudest person in the room to command respect." Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the wine, or Shane's attention, or Graham's complete indifference to another man openly flirting with his wife. But suddenly, I needed to shake things up, to get some kind of reaction from my emotionally distant husband. "Oh, Graham's definitely not the loudest," I said with a laugh that sounded sharper than I intended. "He's not really the biggest anything, if you know what I mean." The table went quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, but I was committed now, riding the wave of attention. "I mean, when we first started dating, I honestly wondered if he was too tiny to ever be a father," I continued, gesturing vaguely toward Graham's lap. "Good thing Etta proved that theory wrong, right, honey?" The silence stretched like a held breath. Graham's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. His face remained impassive, but something flickered behind his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or something deeper and more dangerous. "Odessa," Miriam's voice was ice cold. "That is completely inappropriate." "Oh, come on, it's just honesty," I said, suddenly feeling defensive. "We're all adults here. Graham knows I love him just the way he is, don't you, sweetheart?" 7-year-old Etta looked confused, glancing between her parents with growing anxiety. "Mummy, what does that mean?" "Nothing, baby," Graham said quietly, his voice steady despite the tension radiating from his body. "Just grown-up talk." Shane shifted uncomfortably in his seat, suddenly very interested in his pasta. My sister Jules gave a nervous laugh from the other end of the table. "I think what Odessa means is," Jules started. "I think Odessa has said quite enough," Miriam interrupted, her disapproval palpable. Graham carefully placed his napkin on the table and stood up. "Excuse me," he said in that same measured tone. He walked to the front of the restaurant, and I watched him pull out his wallet to settle the bill. "Where's Daddy going?" Etta asked, her voice small. "He's just paying, sweetheart," I said, but unease was creeping in. Graham hadn't looked at me, hadn't argued, hadn't shown any emotion at all. Somehow that felt worse than if he'd exploded in anger. When Graham returned, he simply said, "The car's running. Etta, get your coat." The drive home was suffocating in its silence. Graham's hands gripped the steering wheel with controlled precision, his jaw set in a line I'd never seen before. In the back seat, Etta hummed softly to herself, oblivious to the tension crackling between her parents. "Graham, you're being ridiculous," I finally said as we pulled into our driveway. "It was just a joke. Everyone knows I was kidding around." He turned off the engine and sat for a moment, staring straight ahead. "Was it funny?" he asked quietly. "What?" "Was it funny, Odessa? Did you enjoy yourself tonight?" Something in his tone made my stomach clench. This wasn't the Graham I knew, the man who avoided conflict, who let things slide, who kept the peace at all costs. "I was just trying to liven things up," I said weakly. "You never talk, you never engage." I felt invisible. Graham got out of the car without responding. He helped Etta with her seatbelt and walked her to the front door, leaving me to follow behind like an afterthought. As I watched my husband's rigid shoulders disappear into our house, I wondered if my joke had been worth the laugh I thought I'd get. But surely Graham would get over it by morning. He always did. I had no idea that everything had just changed forever. The next morning, Graham was already gone when I woke up. His coffee mug sat clean and dry in the dish rack, and there was no note, something he'd left every morning for the 8 years of our marriage. The absence felt ominous. At the office, I couldn't concentrate on the insurance claims piling up on my desk. Every time I replayed the previous night, I felt a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. Yes, maybe I'd gone too far, but Graham's complete emotional shutdown was exactly the problem in our marriage. "Rough night." Shane appeared at my cubicle with 2 cups of coffee, his smile warm and knowing. "You could say that," I sighed, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Graham's being dramatic about the whole thing." Shane settled into the chair beside my desk, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "Look, Odessa, I've known Graham since college. He's always been intense, takes things way too seriously." "Exactly." I felt validated hearing someone else confirm what I'd been thinking. It was just a joke between married people. If he can't handle a little honesty, that's his problem. "You deserve someone who appreciates your sense of humor," Shane said, his hand briefly touching mine as he reached for a pen. "Someone who doesn't make you feel like you have to walk on eggshells." The contact sent a thrill through me that I hadn't felt in years. When was the last time Graham had touched me spontaneously? When had he last made me feel desired, attractive, worth pursuing? "Shane, you're married too," I said, but I didn't pull my hand away. "Happily?" he asked, his eyes holding mine. "Because I haven't been, not for a long time, and I don't think you have been either." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Jules. "Mum called. She heard about last night from Miriam. Said you really stepped in it this time." I showed Shane the message, rolling my eyes. "The family gossip network strikes again." "Maybe you should call your sister," Shane suggested. "Get some support from someone who actually cares about your happiness." I dialed Jules during my lunch break, needing to hear a friendly voice. "Des, what were you thinking last night?" Jules asked without preamble. "I was thinking my husband ignores me and maybe a little shake-up would wake him up," I said defensively. "By humiliating him in front of his mother, in front of your daughter." It wasn't humiliation, it was honesty. God, everyone's acting like I committed murder. Jules was quiet for a moment. "Look, I get that things have been tough with Graham. He's not exactly Mr. Excitement, but publicly emasculating him. That's not going to fix your marriage, Des. So I'm just supposed to pretend everything's fine. pretend I'm satisfied with a man who treats me like a roommate. Have you tried talking to him? Like, actually talking instead of making jokes at his expense? I bristled. I shouldn't have to beg my own husband for attention. Maybe if he acted like a real man, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere for... I stopped myself, but Jules caught it immediately. Look elsewhere. Odessa, please tell me you're not doing something stupid. I'm not doing anything, I said quickly, but Shane's been attentive. He makes me feel like a woman again. Shane from your office? The married Shane who was at dinner last night. It's not like that, I lied. We're just friends. But at least he notices me, appreciates me. Des, you're playing with fire. Whatever problems you have with Graham, having an affair isn't going to solve them. I'm not having an affair, I snapped, though even as I said it, I knew I was walking that line. I'm just talking to someone who actually listens to me. When I got home that evening, the house felt different. Etta was at Miriam's. Apparently Graham had arranged for his mother to pick her up from school. The silence felt heavy, expectant. I found Graham in his study, laptop open, papers spread across his desk in neat piles. He looked up when I entered, but didn't smile. We need to talk, I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. Do we? His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Graham, I'm sorry about last night. I had too much wine. I was trying to be funny, and it came out wrong. He nodded slowly. It came out wrong. Yes, I didn't mean to embarrass you. But you did mean to hurt me. The statement hung between us like a challenge. I felt my defenses rise. I meant to get a reaction from you. Any reaction. Do you have any idea what it's like being married to someone who acts like I don't exist? Is that what you think? That I act like you don't exist? When's the last time you complimented me, Graham? When's the last time you seemed excited to see me, or touched me without me initiating it, or showed any passion about anything involving me? Graham leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. When's the last time you showed me respect, Odessa? When's the last time you spoke about me to others with kindness instead of criticism? That's not... When's the last time you made me feel like you actually liked me instead of just tolerating me? His questions hit harder than I expected. I do like you. Do you? Because last night, in front of my mother, our daughter, and my old friend, you made it very clear that you find me inadequate, physically, sexually, as a man and as a father. Guilt twisted in my stomach, but I pushed it away. It was a joke, Graham. Was it? Or was it your honest opinion dressed up as humor? I didn't answer, and my silence spoke volumes. Graham turned back to his laptop. I think you should stay in the guest room tonight. Etta doesn't need to see us fighting. We're not fighting. You won't even engage enough to fight. No, Odessa, I won't give you another opportunity to humiliate me. Not in front of our daughter, and not in private either. As I left his study, I caught a glimpse of his computer screen. He was looking at a calendar, and I could see an appointment scheduled for the following week. Legal consultation, downtown. My blood ran cold. Surely he wasn't serious about involving lawyers over one bad joke. But as I lay alone in the guest room that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed a line I hadn't even known existed. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Shane's words echoed. You deserve someone who appreciates your sense of humor. Maybe I did. The school's spring carnival was in full swing when we arrived, Graham and I maintaining a careful distance as we walked toward Etta's classroom booth. She'd been excited about the art display for weeks, and despite the tension at home, we'd agreed to attend together for her sake. There's Mommy and Daddy, Etta called out, waving enthusiastically from behind a table covered with her watercolor paintings. Her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, smiled and waved us over. Etta's been so excited to show you her work, Mrs. Henderson said warmly. She's incredibly talented. Graham's face lit up with genuine pride as he examined each painting carefully, asking Etta detailed questions about her techniques and color choices. For a moment, things felt almost normal between us. This one's my favorite, Etta said, pointing to a painting of our family standing in front of our house. See, there's you and Mommy and me, and Grandma Miriam is visiting. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Graham said, crouching down to her level. You captured everyone perfectly. I felt a pang watching them together. Graham might be emotionally distant with me, but he was a devoted father. Etta adored him, and the feeling was clearly mutual. Odessa, Graham. I turned to see Shane approaching with his wife, Rebecca. My pulse quickened involuntarily, and I smoothed my hair self-consciously. Shane, hi, I said, my voice coming out slightly breathless. Rebecca, so nice to see you. Rebecca's smile was polite but cool. She'd always been pleasant enough, but I'd sensed a certain wariness from her lately, especially after Shane had started mentioning me more frequently in their conversations. How's the insurance business treating you? Shane asked, standing closer to me than necessary. Oh, you know how it is. Same claims, different day, I laughed, hyper-aware of Graham's presence beside me. At least you have interesting co-workers to keep things lively, Shane said with a meaningful look. Rebecca's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, and Graham glanced between Shane and me with a frown. Daddy, come see the ring toss, Etta called, tugging on Graham's hand. Go ahead, I told him. I'll catch up in a minute. As Graham walked away with Etta, Shane moved closer. You look incredible today, he said quietly. That color is perfect on you. Shane, I whispered, glancing around nervously, your wife is right there. She's talking to the other parents. Besides, I can't help noticing when a beautiful woman walks into a room. The attention was intoxicating after days of Graham's cold shoulder. You're terrible, I said, but I was smiling. How are things at home? Shane asked, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. Complicated, I admitted. Graham's being incredibly dramatic about the whole dinner thing. You'd think I'd committed treason instead of making one little joke. He always was too sensitive, Shane said, shaking his head. Remember in college how he'd sulk for days if someone teased him about anything? Exactly. He can dish it out, but he can't take it. You deserve better than walking on eggshells in your own marriage, Shane said, his hand briefly touching my arm. Life's too short to spend it with someone who doesn't appreciate what he has. A group of other parents had gathered nearby, and I noticed a few curious glances in our direction. The attention felt good, people seeing me as desirable, worth pursuing. Speaking of appreciation, I said, raising my voice slightly so the nearby parents could hear, at least some men know how to make a woman feel valued. Shane grinned, clearly enjoying the game. Smart, beautiful, funny. Graham's a lucky man. If he's too blind to see it, that's his loss. Well, you know what they say about the quiet ones, I continued, emboldened by the audience. Still waters run shallow. A few parents chuckled, and I felt a rush of satisfaction. This was what I'd been missing. Wit, banter, people actually engaging with me instead of just tolerating my presence. Odessa. Graham's voice cut through my moment of triumph like ice water. I turned to find him standing behind me, Etta's hand in his face carefully blank. But his eyes were cold in a way I'd never seen before. Etta wants to show us the science fair projects, he said evenly. Of course, I said, suddenly aware that several parents were watching our interaction with uncomfortable interest. As we walked toward the science displays, I could feel the weight of curious stares following us. Mrs. Henderson appeared at my elbow, her professional smile not quite masking her concern. Is everything all right, Mrs. Morell? She asked quietly. Everything's fine, I said quickly. Just enjoying the carnival. But I caught the look she exchanged with another teacher, and I realized my harmless flirtation might not have been as subtle as I'd thought. The rest of the evening passed in stilted politeness. Graham was courteous but distant, speaking only when directly addressed and keeping his responses brief. When Etta asked why Daddy seemed sad, he simply said he was tired from work. As we prepared to leave, Shane approached one more time. Great seeing you both, he said, but his eyes were on me. Odessa, I'll see you Monday morning. Looking forward to it, I replied, aware that Graham was listening. The drive home was silent except for Etta's chatter about the carnival. When we pulled into our driveway, Graham's phone buzzed with a calendar notification. I caught a glimpse of the screen. Legal consultation, tomorrow, 2 p.m. My stomach dropped. Graham, you're not seriously considering... Considering what? He asked mildly, helping Etta out of her car seat. Whatever that appointment is about. I have several appointments this week, he said, not denying or confirming anything. Architecture is a busy field. But as I watched him walk into the house, Etta skipping beside him, I knew that appointment had nothing to do with architecture. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt genuinely afraid. That night, as I lay alone in the guest room again, I replayed the evening's events. Maybe I had been a little too obvious with Shane. Maybe I should have been more careful about the audience. But Graham's reaction was still completely overblown. One joke at a family dinner and some harmless flirtation at a school event didn't warrant involving lawyers. He was just trying to scare me, to regain some control in our marriage. I was sure of it. I had to be. The next few days passed in an eerie calm that felt more ominous than any argument. Graham maintained his polite distance, speaking to me only about household logistics and Etta's schedule. He left early for work and returned late, spending his evenings in his study with the door closed. At the office, Shane had become more cautious, our interactions limited to professional necessities. When I asked him about lunch, he claimed he was swamped with case reviews. Everything okay? I pressed, following him to the break room. Just busy, he said, not meeting my eyes. Rebecca's been asking questions about the carnival. Apparently some of the other wives mentioned seeing us talking. So, we were just talking. Were we? Shane asked, finally looking at me directly. Because it felt like more than that, and I think other people picked up on it too. A chill ran through me. What kind of questions? The kind that make me realize I need to be more careful about my reputation, Shane said, grabbing his coffee and heading back to his desk. I spent the rest of the day fielding curious looks from coworkers and trying to focus on my claims reports, but my mind kept wandering to Graham's mysterious appointment and Shane's sudden distance. That evening, I found Graham in his study again, surrounded by papers and folders I didn't recognize. His laptop was open, but he quickly minimized the screen when I entered. What are you working on? I asked, trying to sound casual. Just organizing some documents, he said without looking up. I moved closer, trying to read the folder labels on his desk. I could make out financial statements and what looked like custody before Graham smoothly gathered the papers into a neat stack. Custody? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Graham, what the hell is going on? He looked up at me then, his expression unreadable. I'm being thorough. Thorough about what? About protecting what matters most to me. The way he said it made my blood run cold. If you're talking about Etta... I'm always talking about Etta, Graham said quietly. She's my priority. She always has been. She's my daughter too. Is she? Because lately it seems like your priorities lie elsewhere. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. That's not fair. Isn't it? When's the last time you put Etta's needs before your own desire for attention? I don't. The dinner, Odessa. The carnival. Do you think she doesn't notice the tension? Do you think she doesn't hear the whispers from other parents about her mother's behavior? Shame twisted in my stomach, but I pushed it away with anger. My behavior? I haven't done anything wrong. Graham stood up, closing his laptop with deliberate precision. Haven't you? No. I made one joke that you're completely overreacting to, and I talked to an old friend at a school event. If you want to turn that into some kind of federal case, that's your dysfunction, not mine. An old friend, Graham repeated slowly. Is that what Shane is to you? Yes. And the text messages? My heart stopped. What text messages? Graham reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. From it, He extracted several printed pages that I recognized with growing horror as screenshots of text conversations. The ones where you complain about being trapped in a loveless marriage, Graham read in a monotone voice. The ones where you call me emotionally unavailable and physically disappointing. The ones where you discuss meeting Shane for drinks after work. My mouth went dry. How did you... You left your phone charging in the kitchen, Graham said simply. The messages were right there on the lock screen. You went through my phone? I didn't have to. You weren't exactly being discreet. I stared at the printed messages, my own words condemning me in black and white. But instead of shame, I felt a surge of righteous anger. So what? So I vented to someone who actually listens to me. So I considered having drinks with a friend. That doesn't make me a criminal. No, Graham agreed, but it does make you unfaithful. I haven't slept with him. Yet. The word hung between us like a blade. Because he was right, I hadn't crossed that final line. But I'd been thinking about it. I'd been planning it, fantasizing about it, working up the courage for it. I want you out of the house, I said suddenly, desperate to regain some control. If you can't trust me, if you're going to spy on me and treat me like a criminal, then you can leave. Graham's smile was small and cold. This is my house, Odessa. I've been paying the mortgage for 8 years. My name is on the deed. It's our house. Actually, it's not. Check the paperwork. You never signed the deed because your credit was too poor to qualify for the loan. The words hit me like a physical blow. In all our years of marriage, Graham had never thrown financial disparities in my face. He'd simply handled the major expenses without making me feel inadequate about my smaller income. You bastard, I whispered. I'm being practical, Graham said, returning the folder to his drawer and locking it. Something I should have done a long time ago. As he walked past me toward the door, I grabbed his arm. Graham, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... Can we? Because from where I'm standing, you've already made your choice. You chose to humiliate me publicly. You chose to pursue another man. You chose to prioritize your own desires over our family's stability. I chose to try to save our marriage. By destroying it, Graham shook his head. No, Odessa, you chose to burn it down rather than do the hard work of building it up. He left me standing alone in his study, surrounded by the evidence of his methodical preparation for something I was only beginning to understand. That night I called Jules, desperate for someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. He's collecting evidence, I told her, pacing the guest room, like I'm some kind of criminal. What kind of evidence? Jules asked, her voice careful. Text messages, financial documents, custody papers. He's building a case against me. A case for what? Divorce. He's going to try to take Etta away from me. Jules was quiet for a long moment. Des, honey, maybe you should get a lawyer too. I shouldn't need a lawyer. This is all insane. One joke and some harmless flirting, and he's acting like I'm the worst wife in history. Is it just harmless flirting? What's that supposed to mean? I mean, are you planning to take things further with Shane? I hesitated too long before answering. No. Odessa. I don't know, okay? Maybe. Graham clearly doesn't want me anymore, so why shouldn't I find someone who does? Because you're still married. Because you have a daughter. Because actions have consequences. Consequences like what? Like my husband turning into a cold, calculating stranger who spies on me and threatens to take my child away. Consequences like losing everything, Jules said quietly. Des, I love you, but you need to think about what you're doing. Really think about it, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Graham is way ahead of you in this game. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of the guest room, trying to figure out how everything had spiraled so far out of control. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a married woman with normal marital problems. Now I was sleeping alone, while my husband built a legal case against me. But I wasn't going down without a fight. If Graham wanted to play hardball, I could learn the rules too. Tomorrow, I'd start gathering my own evidence. I'd show everyone who the real victim was in this marriage. I woke up to the sound of hushed voices in the kitchen. Checking my phone, I saw it was barely 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Graham's voice was too low to make out words, but I could hear the measured cadence that meant he was discussing something serious. Slipping on my robe, I crept toward the kitchen and peered around the corner. Graham sat at our breakfast table with a man I didn't recognize, middle-aged, wearing a crisp suit despite the early hour, with a briefcase open beside his coffee cup. "The documentation is thorough," the man was saying, flipping through a thick folder. "Text messages, witness statements from the restaurant and school events, financial records showing separate accounts." My stomach plummeted. This was Graham's lawyer, and they were discussing me like I was a case study. "What about custody?" Graham asked quietly. "With this evidence of infidelity and public humiliation, plus character witnesses regarding stability and primary caretaking responsibilities, you'd have a strong position for primary custody." I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering. Primary custody. He was actually planning to take Etta away from me. "I don't want to traumatize her," Graham said. "She loves her mother." "Of course, we'd seek joint custody with you as primary guardian. Odessa would have visitation rights, but the child would live primarily with you. And financially, given the prenup and the fact that the house is solely in your name, she'd be entitled to minimal spousal support. Her affair eliminates most of her leverage." Prenup. The word hit me like ice water. I remembered signing papers when we got married, but Graham had assured me they were just formalities, insurance requirements. I'd trusted him and barely read them. "When do we proceed?" Graham asked. "I can file the papers Monday morning. She'll be served by the end of the week." I backed away from the kitchen, my hands shaking. This was really happening. Graham wasn't bluffing or trying to scare me. He was methodically dismantling our marriage with the same precision he brought to his architectural projects. I spent the day in a haze, watching Graham interact normally with Etta, while I felt like I was drowning. He helped her with homework, made her lunch, took her to the park. The perfect father, building his case for custody with every loving gesture. That evening, after Etta went to bed, I confronted him. "I heard you this morning," I said, cornering him in the living room. "With your lawyer?" Graham looked up from his book without surprise. "I assumed you might." "How can you do this to me, to our family?" "I'm protecting our family, what's left of it." "By taking my daughter away?" "By providing her with a stable home environment," Graham corrected. "One where she doesn't have to witness her mother's affairs or hear other parents gossiping about her family's dysfunction." "I'm not having an affair." Graham set down his book and looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Odessa, I have copies of every text message between you and Shane for the past 3 months. I have witness statements from the restaurant, the school carnival, and your office colleagues. I have bank records showing you've been withdrawing cash for lunches and drinks that you never mentioned to me. Those were just... I have photos from Shane's social media showing the two of you at Rossetti's bar last Thursday when you told me you were working late." My mouth went dry. I'd forgotten about Shane posting that picture of us at the bar, my hand on his arm, both of us laughing at something he'd said. "One drink," I whispered. "One drink that you lied about. One of many lies, apparently." I sank into the chair across from him, the weight of my situation finally hitting me. "Graham, please. I know I've made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out." "Can we?" "Because I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about whether this marriage was ever fixable, or if we've just been going through the motions for years." "What do you mean?" "I mean, when's the last time you were actually happy with me, Odessa? Not settling, not making do, but genuinely happy and satisfied with our life together?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came, because the honest answer was that I couldn't remember. I'd been restless and dissatisfied for so long that contentment felt like a foreign concept. "That's what I thought," Graham said quietly. "We've been roommates raising a child together, not partners building a life." The only difference now is that you found someone else to fill the gaps I couldn't fill. That's not true, isn't it? Shane makes you feel attractive, desired, appreciated. All the things you've been telling me I don't do. I stared at him, stunned by his matter-of-fact tone. If you knew I was unhappy, why didn't you try to change things? I did try. For years I tried. I planned date nights that you cancelled for work events. I bought you gifts that you criticized for being impractical. I suggested vacations that you said we couldn't afford, while you spent money on new clothes to impress your co-workers. Each word was a small blade, cutting through my defenses. I didn't realize. You didn't want to realize. It was easier to blame me for being boring, unromantic, emotionally unavailable. Easier than admitting that maybe you just don't love me anymore. The words hung between us like a challenge, and sitting there, looking at my husband's calm, resigned face, I realized he was right. I didn't love him anymore. Maybe I hadn't for years. So what now? I asked. Now you decide how you want this to go. We can do this quietly, amicably, with Etta's best interests as our priority. Or we can do it publicly, with lawyers fighting over every detail while our daughter watches her parents destroy each other. And if I choose the quiet way? Joint custody with me as primary guardian. You keep your car, your personal belongings, and a reasonable settlement. We tell Etta together, we go to family counselling to help her adjust, and we figure out how to co-parent effectively. And if I fight you, Graham's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Then I use every piece of evidence I've collected, the affair, the public humiliation, the financial irresponsibility, the character witnesses who will testify about your behavior at family and school events. You'll get visitation rights and nothing else. I felt trapped, cornered by my own choices. This is blackmail. This is consequences, Graham corrected, something you've been avoiding for a long time. I need time to think. You have until Monday morning. That's when the papers get filed either way. As I left the living room, I caught sight of our wedding photo on the mantel. Two young people smiling at the camera, full of hope and promise. I barely recognized the woman in that picture, and I wondered when she'd disappeared. That night, I called Shane. I need to see you, I said when he answered. Odessa, I don't think that's a good idea. Graham knows everything. He's filing for divorce Monday. There was a long pause. I'm sorry to hear that. Is that all you have to say? I'm losing my marriage, my home, my daughter, and you're sorry to hear that? What do you want me to say? I want you to say you'll be there for me. I want you to say this means we can finally be together. Another pause, longer this time. Odessa, I think there's been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? I was never planning to leave Rebecca. This was just fun, harmless flirtation. I never meant for it to go this far. The words hit me like a physical blow. Harmless flirtation? You told me I deserved better. You said Graham didn't appreciate me. I was being supportive. I didn't think you'd actually leave him. I'm not leaving him. He's leaving me. Then maybe you should try to work things out with your husband instead of calling me. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. Shane was abandoning me just like that. All his sweet words, his promises that I deserved better, his hints about being unhappy in his own marriage. All of it had been lies designed to get me into bed. I destroyed my marriage for a man who'd never intended to catch me when I fell. Sunday passed in a blur of forced normalcy. Graham took Etta to his mother's house for lunch while I stayed home, ostensibly to catch up on housework, but really to avoid Miriam's knowing looks and sharp comments. When they returned, Etta ran to me with a drawing she'd made at Grandma's house. Another family portrait, but this one showed only her and Graham. "Where am I in the picture, baby?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Grandma said you might be going on a long trip," Etta said, not meeting my eyes. "So I drew just me and Daddy." I looked over her head at Graham, who was watching us with careful attention. Even his mother was preparing Etta for my absence. They were also certain I'd choose to fight, to make this ugly and public. Maybe they knew me better than I knew myself. That night, I made my decision. Monday morning was grey when I told Graham I'd take the quiet option: joint custody, a reasonable settlement, no public war. I added conditions: every other weekend, one weeknight dinner, a say in Etta's big decisions, and that we tell her together. He agreed immediately, because he'd never wanted to cut me out, only to protect our daughter. That afternoon, we sat Etta down and told her we were getting divorced. When she asked why, I had to admit I'd hurt Daddy with my joke and my choices. When she asked why she couldn't live with me, I swallowed the truth, that I'd forfeited that right, and told her Daddy could take better care of her right now, but I'd always be her mum and always love her. That night, Graham and I signed the papers at the kitchen table. Joint custody with him as primary guardian, a fair visitation schedule, 18 months of support so I could start over. He promised to help with my apartment deposit, to stay respectful, to focus on co-parenting. When I asked if he could forgive me, he said he didn't know, but he'd try to let go of the anger, for Etta and for himself. As I left the house for the last time, he told me he hoped I'd find what I was looking for. I realized too late that what I'd been looking for might have been right there all along. 6 months later, in my small one-bedroom, I waited for Etta to arrive for our weekly dinner. The divorce was final, the custody schedule smooth, and Graham steady and kind in every interaction. Shane's marriage had survived, mine hadn't. Etta showed me a drawing of our new family, 3 houses connected by a road, proof she'd adapted better than I had. Graham had protected what mattered most, her stability and sense of being loved. I'd chased attention and a cruel laugh at his expense and lost my home, my daily life with my daughter, and the man I'd mocked as too tiny to be a father, who turned out to be the bigger person in every way. Some words don't wash off, some damage can't be undone, and some prices are far too high to pay for a moment of ego.